Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to a game that is called the Cold War Era. Actually, it's Arms Race, the Cold War Era. It's available on Steam and is a game that puts you in the shoes of either the United States or the Soviet Union as you attempt to navigate the Cold War and win the Cold War for yourself. Now, in this game, you can play, as I've mentioned, as either the Soviets or the Americans. You can play with a variety of difficulty settings, a variety of sort of universal settings, economic, diplomatic, militaristic, or historical. You can also choose your leader, Truman, Kennedy, Reagan, Nixon for the US, or Stalin, Khrushchev, Brezhnev, and Gorbachev for the Soviets. And each of those characters has a different set of attributes. So, for example, if I choose Kennedy, then I will have -5 space costs for the entire duration of the game, and Kennedy's pretty little portrait will show up there on the lower left, or Nixon's a smarmy little mug will show up there on the lower left. Likewise, the Soviets have their own leaders. I believe there's change with time, whereas the US leader kind of stays the same as long as you're playing. I did find it interesting that Truman and Stalin are apparently wearing the same clothes. I think that's actually also true for all of the leaders here. If we kind of click through all of them, they all have the same outfit on. Gorbachev has the same outfit. Actually, both Nixon and Reagan have the same outfit. But Truman has kind of a Stalinist-looking outfit on, and Kennedy has, I don't know if it's a Gorbachev or a Khrushchev outfit, or if Khrushchev is wearing Kennedy's clothes. Not really sure. In any event, you can also only level up your difficulty when you win the game. So we played this once before as like a first look type of a deal, and we played as the Soviet Union, and we won the game on easy, so now we can play on medium. The United States, we have not won this game. We really haven't played it, but I played once on a live stream as the US, and I lost. But we haven't yet won on the easy campaign, and so we can't progress to higher difficulties. You can see here the campaign has multiple different sort of difficulties with different objectives. So when you're playing as the easy game, you've got to win the space race and win the game. We've done that for the Soviet Union, so this is colored up. We haven't done it for the US. The second level is 50 good scores. To achieve this mission, you need to finish the game as the winner with 50 or more scores on medium difficulty. So I think your overall score or points on the lower right need to be 50. Or in the hard difficulty, you need to launch a coup d'etat against your enemies. So those are the different victory conditions. There's also some DLC victory conditions. There's a Armageddon version of the game where you want to nuke the world. But we're not looking to nuke the world today. Today we're going to be playing as the US, and we're going to be trying to win the game's space race. Now, I do think rather than go with cheaper space technology, I'm actually going to go with Nixon as my character, because the way I'm going to be playing is going to rely heavily on the number of spies and diplomats that we get. So if we can get a +2 to their annual production, I think that'll help us a long way along our journey. Hello, Americans. Nice one, Larthangton. Hello, comrades. It is I, you American president. Do not be alarmed. I guess that's if Truman's wearing his Stalin outfit. Alright, let's quickly pause the game. So the game starts in medium difficulty here. You can see we are the United States, and we are blue. Canada is also blue. You can see here Eastern European countries, and I will say this music is very reminiscent of this metallic music. Sounds like it's right out of Red Alert 2. But you can see here in Europe, France, Germany, the UK, and Canada in North America, the United States, obviously, and Japan and South Korea are all blue nations, which means they're part of our alliance bloc. The Soviet Union have the Mongolians, the Chinese, the Romanians, Bulgarians, Hungarians, Czechoslovakians, Polish, and Eastern Germans. You can see here both countries' score is actually encapsulated up here. So the Soviet Union has 22 score, the US has 22 score. That score is made up of, if you click on a country, you can see the US is worth 5 points, the Canadians are worth 2 points, the British are worth 4, the French worth 4, the Germans worth 3, and that's kind of the same deal as far as how the countries' scores are made up. So the higher the score here, the more you win your game based on having more score than the enemy. You can see here there are several Western European countries which we're not drawing any points from: Spain, Italy, Belgium, Portugal. We're going to focus on trying winning those countries over into Warsaw. So obviously not terribly historical, because those countries, many of them were part of NATO, and yet they're not here in this game at the start of the game. Meanwhile, in South Korea, we have the South Koreans, the USSR has the North Koreans, and the Korean War is about to start as well, so we'll have to manage through that. Now, one thing in terms of changing countries blue or red to your side, you can do that a couple of ways. In our last stream, we kind of stumbled through it. So there's two ways you can do this. First, you can either get the score here. This is your influence in this country. So right now, for example, in France, we have 10 influence. The Soviets have 5. You can get this over 80, I believe, with an opposition score over 80 as well, and then you can do a new government. The alternative to that is you can do, you can just get the opposition score up high enough, and if the enemy has a higher influence score than you, then you can actually launch a coup d'etat by sending military forces in. So you can either get opposition really high with low influence, or you can get influence and opposition really high, and then simply overthrow their government, in some cases without any combat. Now, ways you influence opposition, so the smiley face here is support for the government, this fist is opposition. Ways you can influence this score here is by either doing support parades or support riots in those countries. The number of spies, as represented on these icons down here, influence how effective each one of those are. So, for example, right now in France, we have 3 spies. If we were to go ahead and do a support parade, this figure here would rise by 3. If we did 4, it would rise by 4. Same if we supported a riot in that country. Additionally, this little AK-47 symbol here represents our ability to deploy military force. We have 30 military units that we can deploy. These icons here, the chevrons here, or the stars for the Russians, represent how many of those are currently in country. The sort of briefcase here represents how many diplomats you have. Diplomats, every action you do, so if we were to add influence here, for example, that would cost 1 diplomat, and we can do it once per month. So raising support in a country costs you 1 diplomat per month, and you have to be investing in diplomats and things like that to actually increase your influence. So first off, let's go ahead and kind of go through here as well. Space race. This is the space race icon. For every dollar you spend here, you get a counter toward this level 50. Which is once you reach 50, then you kind of progress to the right along these space buildings. Likewise, once you build your first space building, you'll start to be able to start spending money on launchers, which will also go up this line over here. The way you spend money is by going, well, essentially, you get 3 actions per turn or per year. One increasing, for example, let's do this. Let's go ahead and increase ground launch facilities investments for space race to $1. That's $1 per month. That means it'll get us to 12 at the end of the first year. That cost us 1 of our 3 action points. So we can only do 3 things that cost money per turn, and we've just done 1 toward the space race. Likewise, we can invest money in new military technologies or military production over here. As you advance further down the right, you get more firepower for different types of units, land, sea, or air, based on researching new technologies. Additionally, you can go to the economics screen and you can invest in the growth of your budget. So you start off with a reasonably healthy budget, but if this number here, which is the total amount of money you have in your coffers, ever drops below 2,000, then you'll have a crisis of elites, which wipes out all spending on all programs everywhere, and you can only, again, spend $1 3 times in a given turn or given year to sort of increase spending, and that still applies if you have a crisis of the elites. So if you ever drop below 2,000, your economy essentially is going to be in crisis. This doesn't matter yet. And then if we go to the diplomatic section here, you can see we have $1 invested in spies every month, nothing invested in diplomats. So I don't know if we get the Nixon +2 just because, or when that kicks in, but I am going to spend $1 on new diplomats for my second action of the year. So we're spending 1 on spies, 1 on diplomats. And then actually with my third production dollar, I'm going to go ahead and invest in some technology, in some military technology. So we're going to go ahead and invest 1 in land combat to start to help get us some firepower bonuses as well. So that's what we're doing. $1 in ground facilities, $1 in military facilities, and $1 on diplomats for this first year of the game. The game is currently paused. I'm actually going to go ahead and assign some of my actions first off right away. So the first thing I'm going to try and do here is I'm going to try and start winning the support of some of our allies who are not yet in our camp. So they're not yet blue. So both Belgium and Italy are not in the blue. Italy's actually worth 2 score. So I'm actually going to go ahead and use one of our diplomats here to raise our support in Italy. I'm going to go ahead and assign 1 spy to Italy. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually we're not going to do anything with military. So then I'm also going to go to Benelux, the Low Countries, and spend 1 diplomatic point here to increase our influence there. And I'm also going to go ahead and add 1 spy, because what I am going to try and do is get the opposition above 80 once our support is above 80. And then we can do a new government coup d'etat, which will allow us to get both of these countries into our orbit. Now, I still have 3 more diplomatic moves I could take this month, but because I only have 3 diplomats total, and I'm only going to be producing, I think, 1 per month, I think what I'm going to kind of do is focus on other things, and I'll just kind of let the diplomatic icon sit here, because every month, again, once we get to January, or once we get to February, we can spend money again on getting that influence up. Let's go ahead and switch it over to medium difficulty, and I'm actually going to swing over here to the east, and I fully expect the Korean War. Yep, there you go. The Korean War has just broken out in South Korea. You can see the Russians have launched an invasion. They've got a large number of these red icons here in South Korea. We'll deploy 1 ground unit here to max out our strength here. And in North Korea, actually, there's some combat going on as well. We'll go ahead and deploy 3 ground troops in North Korea as well, just to try and tie down some of these communist forces over here. I'm not going to deploy the majority of my forces here, but we are going to... let's actually wait, pause. But we're going to deploy some troops there just to keep them busy. Would you like to support local Democratic Party in Japan? Yes, that gives us an increase in 20 influence, which is good. South Korea and North Korea are at war, which is represented by their flags over here. Again, we're not going to do anything else in North Korea. We will stay kind of pat in South Korea. So, spoiler alert, we're going to lose in North Korea. The Russians have all of these troops deployed. We have just a small number. And if we try and crank our forces all the way up to the max, frankly, I've tried it before, we will lose the war. The communists are just going to outpower us there. But we should win in the south as long as we commit the majority of our military forces there. Additionally, I think what I'll do is I'll start having some support parades in South Korea, because you can see the opposition level of their government is very high, and we want to get them supporting us more strongly than the opposition. Meanwhile, we are now into May, so we've actually progressed a few turns, so we can go ahead and spend some more money in both Italy and Belgium to raise our support, and we can also start deploying some more spies there as well. You can see actually the Russians have a lot of spies in the Benelux countries. I'm going to await to launch any riots there, however, until our influence is up a little bit higher. So let's go back to medium difficulty here, and or medium speed here, and let's get things moving along. So we've deployed more influence. And then we'll just kind of need to keep pouring in reinforcements here in North Korea, or in South Korea. In the north, you can see the fighting is ongoing. We're losing casualties, but I'm not going to replace those losses, because again, you can see we've already almost spent 10 military forces on this war, and we're just a few months in. I guess we could do a support parade, though, for the Korean government. Deploy 1 more spy there. I think if the support level is also higher, then that actually does give you some benefits of combat. Alright, so the year is up. We're into 1951. You can see how those years fly by very quickly. So let's go check back in on South Korea. Military forces are still good. Go ahead and have a support parade here. You can see our influence is now above the 80% coup level. And then if we go to Western Europe, if we go to Belgium, we can go ahead and add more influence, because we now have 3 diplomats. So we're going to continue increasing our influence there. We'll go ahead and increase our spies. We also have more money to invest. You can see here our economy is a little bit above. You can see this $132 icon means that we have $132 more dollars, I believe it's per month, than we're spending. We're actually going to invest 1 of our units in the economy to ensure that continues to grow healthily. We have 2 remaining, which means we're going to go ahead and invest 1 in the space programs. And then with our one remaining dollar, we're going to go ahead and invest $1 in... We want to do air power? Actually, we think we'll prefer to do diplomats. So we'll spend one more dollar on diplomats. Next year, we'll invest a little bit more in the military. But for now, we'll go one more in diplomats, try and help us out here. Okay, so we can go ahead and add one more influence. And now what we can do is we can start supporting riots. Try and overthrow the government and replace it with a friendly government. I'm actually kind of... Gotta make sure we keep our influence over 80 here. The war in South Korea going. All of our forces have been wiped out now in North Korea, as I've mentioned they would be. And in South Korea, we're at least holding our own. Looks like the Soviets are starting to get bled to death, so that's good. Okay. I need more diplomats. We've now triggered the Berlin airlift for the United States, plus 30 U.S. influence and plus 10 opposition in Eastern Germany, -5 influence in Soviet alliance. That's good for us. Let's see here, we actually have more influence than the Eastern Germans do in East Germany. And opposition's relatively high as well. All right, so we made it through the year. We're now into 1952. We're going to go ahead and... only have 2 spies. I've got 3 diplomats. Go ahead and increase influence in Italy. Go ahead and let's have another riot here in Belgium here shortly. Go ahead and spend money on the space race. We're going to go ahead and spend $1 more on ground facilities. We'll spend $1 more on increasing the economy. And we'll spend $1 more on the military. Matter of whether we want to do air or ground. I think we'll do ground. Ground research. Production's low, but frankly, we don't have a lot of conflicts going on around the globe, and we've got a reasonable buffer of 21 military force, so that we probably are okay at our current military levels. You can see we're about to win in South Korea. Sure why I can't riot. There we go. Alright, so we should be able to start a revolution in Belgium next year, I think. It's probably when we'll be able to do it. We're almost to 80%. We need 2 more riots to get there, unless there's other actions or if this continues to grow slowly. Probably want to have a little bit above 80 influence, just as a little bit of a buffer in case it drops a little bit, because it has dropped from 78 a few times. China is being considered in the Soviet bloc, and Taiwan doesn't even exist as far as the game's concerned. South Korea... Yeah, of course we'll support the South Korean government. Ah, we can almost do a riot, and just not quite. Almost to riot levels in Belgium. Or new government levels. We're just a 0.5% away, and I think we need a diplomatic point for it as well. Alright, so the year is over. Support a riot. So we're now in 1953. We can support a riot, and now that the opposition level is above 80% and our support level is above 80%, we can install a new government in Belgium. A new democratic government is in Belgium, which is now going to support us. We've got a 1 score here, so it increases our, well, will increase our score briefly to 23, or it should. Just waiting. I don't know if it's like an annual thing. It starts over at the end of the year. Nope, next month. Okay, so you can see here 23 versus 22. So in the score department, we're beating the Soviets. The American communism action has been triggered, which means Soviet influence removed in the U.S., plus 10 U.S. influence in all democratic countries. So that's good for us. That gives us an increased influence in various democratic countries. I don't know if Italy counts as democratic in this game or not. Spain probably doesn't, but in any event, now we're going to have to start working on Italy to come to our side. So we'll do another riot in Italy, use our last spy up there, gets it up to 71%, and then we'll use over the next couple of months influence to get us up to 80, so then we can overthrow the Italian government and add them to our score. Now, if we go to the economy here, you can see our economic growth was 1% last year. I'm going to go ahead and invest $1 more in the economy. Additionally, Space Race completed its first objective in this last year, so we have our first ground facilities. Actually, the Soviets do as well. This little star here means the Soviets have already done that. But now we're going to go ahead and invest $2 in the space launching facilities to try and catch up our launchers so that we can really start making some progress in the space race. Because remember, we're playing the easy difficulty game, which means we need to win the space race in this game. So we've now invested $5 per turn in the space race, and that's where we're at the moment. Additionally, if we go back to the military screen here, you can see we've researched our our second tier of military technology, the M113, and you can see the Soviets have not yet researched Tier 2 on land combat, which gives us a benefit, a firepower benefit, a +5 firepower benefit for that item, I guess. Or maybe it's more than 5, I don't know. It says 10 up here, but it says 5 down here, so I'm not sure if there's anything else going on that might be influencing that score or not, but it is what it is. Our military units in stockpile are 22. We've won the South Korean War. There are no more Soviet forces in South Korea. So while we weren't able to take over the North, we did hold the South, and we still have 22 units in stockpile in the event of another conflict kicking off. So that's the situation at the start of 1953, and we've allocated our points accordingly. The Soviets actually have more economic influence at the moment than we do, though. If you look at their economy, they actually have a larger budget. I think they might have been investing more in the economy here to start the game, because you can see this little icon here represents growth. And you can see the Soviets have been outstripping the U.S. slightly in total gross national product within their alliance bloc or within their country. I don't know if this represents alliance bloc economics or if it represents just the U.S. I'm not really sure if there is an alliance element to that. So let's go back here to Italy. We'll go ahead and spend our diplomat point. We'll support another riot. And then another diplomat point. The Soviet Union has just developed a new technology. They appear to be going down the air combat route. You can see here the star represents an air unit, which has been researched. We're just about ready to throw Italy into our camp as well. Just need one more spy so we can launch that riot and then lead to the new government. I assume it'll start at the beginning of the next year. Okay. So we'll go ahead and immediately pause the game. You can see Italy can now support a riot, and then we can do a new government. So just like that, 2 spy actions in a matter of moments, but Italy is now in the democratic sphere as well. There are no communist forces here. Sometimes there will be a revolution in a country if you do turn it to your side, and then you have to win the ground combat, but there are no communist forces in Italy at the moment, so I think we avoided that risk. Okay, so Italy's at 80. Who else do we want to try and bring into the fold? Austria is pretty far away from being in our camp. The Norwegians are actually pretty close. They're at 70. Their score is only worth 1. Is there anybody else that is going to be easier to convince to join us? I guess we'll go with Norway next. Their opposition score is relatively high, and so is their diplomat score here. So we'll go ahead and add a spy to Norway. We don't have any yet. And we're also into 1954, so what we're going to do here is we're going to continue spending. You can see the Soviets have now researched the second ground launch facility. We're actually almost there as well. We'll be there in the next turn or so. I'll invest one more dollar in ground facilities, and we're going to hold pat on the space race for a little bit. We're going to go ahead and invest one more dollar in our economy, and then for the military, we're going to invest one in air units because we haven't invested anything there yet. So that makes up 1954's budget. And then we'll just kind of continue spending some points here to get our influence in Norway up. You can see we still have Nixon. Stalin is the Soviet leader. So I don't know if that'll change over time or not. I'm going to try and get the spies up before we start any riots or anything like that. Hey, Charcoal. The USSR successfully launches the first prototype of a ballistic missile on the V-2 rocket. So we just launched the first prototype of... So we're basically a month behind them in the space launcher section of the space race. If we go back here, we can see we have caught up with them in the ground units, and we are tied with them in the air units. I think they're slightly ahead of us, though. Their research is occurring before us. The Hungarian Revolution has occurred, minus 40 in Hungary, plus 30 Soviet influence in Austria. What we want. Let's go ahead and pause here. Japan would like to support local nationalists. 20, no. I'm not going to support nationalists in Japan. Why would I do that? I want them on my side, not on a neutral side. All right, so we now have Norway up to 80. We'll probably develop it up to 86 or so, just as a little bit of a buffer. I think we're going to need to start spending a little bit more heavily on our economy as well shortly to try and keep that growth up. By the way, these items up here, these events, Berlin Airlift, Hungarian Revolution, they last through the decade. So once we're out of the 1950s, we'll see a different set of potential influences in the 1960s. I don't like to play above medium just because things can happen pretty quick. Soviet Union just developed the first spacesuit, so they moved one more level here. They're a little bit ahead of us. Let's go ahead and invest one more in ground units, ground launchers. Go ahead and continue to invest one in our economy. And best. I hate spending so much on the military. We're actually only getting one new unit per year, though. I feel like it's kind of a trade-off between space or military at the moment. I think we'll do one more for the space race at the moment. Norway's on right foot here, so we're going to go ahead and start investing in trying to bring Denmark into the fold as well. So now that we've got Norway above 80, we'll start spending diplomat points in Denmark to bring them up to 80. Meanwhile, we're going to start launching some riots in Norway here. But I'd like to try and get our spy level up to 5 so it can happen really quickly. So we get them up to 84. I think we'll leave them there. We won't do any more diplomatic investments here. The other thing is if you have a large military in a given country, when you do the new government, generally they'll just come over to your side. If you have a small military, they might actually form a rebellion against us. And I think that's why we did okay in Belgium and Italy, is their military was large enough that it just went along with it. So that's why I just spent a little bit of money here on the... God damn it, they just did another space launch. We're like 3 months behind them there. Also, by the way, if you do space activities first, then you get more prestige. You get global influence down here at a higher rate. So being ahead in the space race pays. All right, so we just caught up to them. We're getting diplomats a lot faster than spies. I think if we're investing one more dollar in them. Okay, so Norwegian revolts, I think next year in 1956, they will join us for our alliance block, which again, we're winning this score up here. All right, so we are into 1956. Let's see where our economy's at. Economy's still growing. I'm going to invest $2 in the economy this turn. Thank you very much for the bits, Spearhead Your Gamer. Really appreciate it. All right, so we're going to invest 2 in the economy, and I think we're going to invest 1 in military production, or 1 in air or technology. All right, everybody, that's going to do it with part one of our look at arms race, the Cold War era. In this first part, we have successfully lured both the Low Countries, Belgium, Holland, and Luxembourg into our alliance, as well as Italy now. So we've started to solidify Western Europe. We're up a couple of points over the Russians right now, and we've begun our investment in the space race. With that being said, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys are interested in this series. Let me know your thoughts below as always. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying thank you for watching, and I'm out.